And to kick it off today is Dr. Wayne Lewis from UK.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, it is an honor to have the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon, so thank you so much for having us. I thought I'd start by just telling you a little bit about myself. As Hal said, I am a faculty member at the University of Kentucky. However, I want to make it clear that I'm not here representing the University of Kentucky's position. I am here as a board member for the Kentucky Charter Schools Association and as a scholar and activist in education policy and politics. I am a former public school teacher. I started my career in public education in the New Orleans public schools. And before my wife and I left Louisiana, I had the opportunity to teach in both the New Orleans public schools at Booker T. Washington High School, which at that time was the lowest performing public school in the state of Louisiana, and also the St. Charles Parish Public Schools, which at that time was one of the highest performing school districts in the state of Louisiana. And I'm thankful for having the opportunity to have worked in both of those settings so that I could compare and contrast. In 2005, after Katrina, my wife and I, who's also an educator, relocated to North Carolina, where I taught in the Wake County Public Schools, Longview High School, which is a public separate school. And so that, in many ways, is how I approach this issue as an educator, as a school teacher. I went on to do my doctoral work in looking specifically at school choice issues, charter school issues, and the politics and the policy behind those issues. So that, in a nutshell, is how I come at this. I think it's a great opportunity that we're able to come and speak to you following the presentation on Districts of Innovation. Let me say that I want to personally commend this body for passing that legislation. I think it's an important piece of legislation. I think it does some important things, and I think it can pave the way for educational improvement in our state. However, with that said, I want to say that the Districts of Innovation legislation is based on a few implicit, I believe, assumptions. And I think it's important that we call those assumptions out. That first assumption is that all school districts have good ideas, good innovative ideas for fixing the problems that they have. Districts of Innovation assumes that school districts know what to do with problems, that they have the personnel, that they have the resources to make changes in those districts. My contention is that in many instances that is the case. And I think we saw some examples of that in our previous presentation with our superintendents who have amazing ideas about what they want to do in their school districts to bring in innovative approaches. However, ladies and gentlemen, that is not the case in all school districts. I'm going to talk a little bit with the time that I have today about some of the most persistent problems that we see in school districts in Kentucky. And the reality is that in some of those districts, school leaders, teachers do not know what to do to fix those problems. It's the reality. The travesty is that even in situations where school districts and school leaders don't know what to do to fix those problems, we don't, with legislation currently in Kentucky, allow folks who do have expertise and do have experience with working with those groups to come in and bring innovative approaches. Neither do we allow parents whose children are trapped in those types of schools to have options to take their children out and send them somewhere else. Most of us sitting in this room have school choice. So as we talk about school choice, it tends to be a rather controversial topic, but the reality is most of us here have school choice. Most of us choose homes, choose communities based on the schools in the area because we know all schools are not created equal. My wife and I recently relocated here about 4.5 years ago, and so going through the home buying process, we know that on flyers now that are circulated, schools that serve particular communities are given to home buyers when they walk in the door. You go to an open house and get a flyer, you know the elementary school that serves that home, that community. Why is that? Because we all know, it's no secret, that not all schools are schools that we would want our children to attend. And so most of us, middle-class people, people with social capital, with political capital, with connections, with means, with will, we can move our homes to be in communities where the schools serve our children in a manner that we want our children to be served. That, however, is not the case for poor people in the state of Kentucky. If you are economically disadvantaged, you go and live in a community because you can afford to live in that community. And more often than not, it is the situation that economically distressed communities are served by schools that are not the schools that we would want to send our children to. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a problem. And Districts of Innovation, while it is an important piece of legislation, and I commend you for it, does not address that pressing issue. That's why we're here today. The case has been made, and I won't say, by who, but it's been widely made that things are pretty good in terms of education in Kentucky. We have made significant progress in Kentucky over the last couple decades. There is no debating that. And many of those are as a result of reforms that this body has passed. However, things are not all good in Kentucky. It simply is not the case. I want to talk first of all about some ACT benchmark data. Most of you are familiar with this. But ACT has scores. We have scores on the ACT that say whether or not kids are college and career ready or college ready in certain areas. In English, that score is 18. In social sciences, it's a 21. In mathematics, it's a 22. In biology, it's a 24. For the 2012 ACT tested high school graduates meeting college and career readiness benchmarks by subject area in Kentucky, 17% of Kentucky students met benchmark scores in all 4 subject areas. That's 17, 1-7. 36% of our kids met no benchmarks. 36% of children in Kentucky met not one of those benchmark scores. 17% met 1 benchmark, 18% met 2, 11% met 3, and again 17%, only 17% met all 4. With the handout that I've distributed to you, which has the title Educational Equity Issues in Kentucky, I won't go through all of these, but I think it's needless to say, and I encourage you to look at these on your own time, but there are very serious equity issues, issues of equitable outcomes in schools in Kentucky. I highlight some of those with our graduation rates. For the state, I take a look at Jefferson County Public Schools in particular, and then for an even more microscopic look, take a closer look at Iroquois High School. One of the things that you see consistently when looking at ACT scores is that there are significant achievement gaps that remain between white kids, African American kids, and Hispanic kids in the state of Kentucky, in Jefferson County, and in Iroquois High School. I'll point out one thing that's on your page, which I find to be really, really significant. If you take a look at the middle under Jefferson County Public Schools, the second bullet, the average composite score for white 11th graders in Jefferson County Public Schools was 22.2. That's compared to 19.4 for white children statewide. That means white children in Jefferson County are outperforming white children in the state of Kentucky. I bet a lot of people didn't know that. But if you look at the next bullet, the average composite scores for black 11th graders in Jefferson County was 16.0. Both significantly below the average scores for white 11th graders in Jefferson County and lower than the composite scores for black children statewide. Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to take a look at that. So why are we here today? We're here because we believe charter schools, one, are not a cure-all. That's not why we're here. We're not here because we believe passing charter school legislation will fix all our problems. But we do believe charter schools, the passage of charter school legislation here, will give us the opportunity to deal with some of these pressing issues that we're going to talk about. We have barriers to fixing some of the problems that we have in Kentucky. One of those barriers, I'll be frank with you, is the Jefferson County Teachers Association contract. I'm not saying the barrier is teachers. I'm saying that the barrier is the Jefferson County Teachers Association contract. Because there are provisions in that contract that inhibit the type of flexibility that we were just talking about with these superintendents. So yes, there's state-level statutes, state-level regulations that get in the way of flexibility, but in Jefferson County in particular, there are provisions of that contract that inhibit innovation. As well, bureaucracy is a barrier. We could spend all day talking about bureaucracy. In a charter law, what we want to see is the ability to to have high-performing charter schools, not just any charter schools, but charter schools that are good schools. We want an application process that ensures only the best of the best applications get through. And then once we have charter schools, we want to ensure that those schools are held accountable. Nobody sitting at this table wants to pass charter school legislation so that we can have charter schools that do the same things that our failing traditional public schools are doing right now. That's not our purpose. That does not serve our children well. If we pass charter school legislation and there are charter schools that are not performing well, we want them fixed or shut down. That's our stance. We want the flexibility that the superintendent's talked about that they needed, that many of you said that you applauded. One of the other issues that I hope we have a chance to talk about in question and discussion is this issue of funding. I believe this issue will come back. One of the charges against charter schools legislation is that they will rob traditional public schools of resources. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not true. If we pass charter school legislation in the state of Kentucky today, a charter school sets up in Jefferson County Public Schools, in Jefferson County, right? Not $1 goes to that school unless a child enrolls in that school. How do children get to charter schools? Their parents enroll them in it. So a parent would take their child out of a traditional public school that they feel is not meeting that child's educational needs, move them to a charter school, and then the funding that you allocate for that child follows that child to that charter school. The same way that if a child leaves a Jefferson County public school and enrolls in a Fayette County public school, it is absolutely no different. I'll close with that, and I do hope we have the opportunity to discuss some of these issues more in questions and answers.
Praise God.